Does anyone here own an electric car? Oh, good, someone raised their hand. Did you know that you are one of less than 1% of the American driving public that owns an electric car? And this is a problem for the very reason depicted on this here Tesla Model 3. At the bottom you can see, or at the top rather, you can see the blue stripes represent climate change and the changing climate as it gets red towards the bottom. And this is a direct result of the burning of fossil fuels, mainly from the transportation sector. In the United States, transportation accounts for more carbon emissions than any other sector of the American economy. And so my research focuses on ways to electrify the transportation sector to reduce those emissions. In the United States, if we were to sell nothing but electric cars, for the next 16 years, we would just then transition to a zero carbon emission transportation sector. And so I look for ways to try to speed up that process. Mainly by talking to you 1%ers and asking why and how. What was your decision-making process like? The first study that I did in this area examined these electric vehicle adopters through the innovation decision process, a part of the diffusion of innovations model. Many of you may be familiar with this as the adoption curve, right? So we have the innovators, the early adopters, as we move throughout the social system. The innovation decision process is the micro-level process that happens that tells how do people make those decisions. And so what I wanted to do was look at people who have already adopted electric cars and figure out why they had done so, what communication channels they looked for, and what barriers they faced. And one of the most striking results from this study was that people experience what is called range anxiety. So electric cars inherently have less mileage than gasoline cars, and people are afraid of this. They're afraid that they'll be stranded on the side of the road without being able to recharge. However, some of them had already adopted an EV in the face of this barrier, and so I wanted to understand better why did they do so and how would they overcome that barrier. For many of them, the number one way they overcame that was simply by experiencing an electric car, by being in one, by driving one, and by getting to know what it's like. Unfortunately, this is kind of a problem if you don't already have an electric car or you don't know someone who does. And dealerships have been very reluctant to stock electric cars to allow people to experience them. And so my solution to this is a game, a board game that allows you to experience what it's like to be an electric vehicle owner vicariously through a fun and entertaining environment, therefore overcoming the initial resistance that you might have and any preconceived notions that you have about electric cars. And so my game, if you can see up here in the top right, is actually based on an exact map of the city of Tallahassee. You get to drive around and experience your daily commute, and at the end of the day, or the end of your turn, see how many miles you have left and can continue on the next day. This game is currently in the prototype phase, and data will be collected this summer as a part of my thesis project. The last thing I want to talk about, though, is very important to me. Research is useless if we don't share it, and share broadly beyond our own academic circles. I have taken the results of my first study and my knowledge of electric cars and gone out into the community, specifically with a group called Sustainable Tallahassee, and really worked with them to try to bring the results of my research out into the field to a local nonprofit that can use that research to directly affect change in the local community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.